Up until this point, we had a situation under the 8th Amendment in our Constitution where we were telling women in crisis pregnancy to take a plane or a boat. Today we're saying take our hand, we want to look after you in our own country. Up until now we were telling women in crisis pregnancy that they were standing on their own, and today we're saying very clearly as a country, men and women, rural and urban voters right across this island, that we want to stand with you, we want to face the reality in this country, and we want to support women here in Ireland. And I think it's a very powerful and indeed emotional moment for a lot of people in this country. There's an awful lot of people, particularly an awful lot of women, breathing a great sigh of relief today that a stigma has been lifted in this country.
Minister, how do you think it feels to see the vote be so widespread across the country and not just in urban centres?
Yeah, I think there's been an attempt to divide our countries in recent days. This idea that, you know, urban people were going to vote one way and rural people were going to vote the other way. The reality of the 8th Amendment is it has hurt women in every county in Ireland. Urban women, rural women, people living in big cities and small villages. And I think what you saw was people in this country were thinking the issue through very carefully. They were asking the questions. They were listening, even more importantly, to the experience of women. And when it came to vote, whether you lived in rural Ireland or urban Ireland, you knew that the status quo couldn't continue. And to think the scale of the results today right across this country is so important. And this question is now settled, and we'll now get on and we'll legislate to look after women in our own country.
Are you surprised by that? Because we've been on the countryside and people were like, no, no, no. But someone has to vote it yes there as well.
Yes, I mean, I'm really encouraged. I always believed that the overwhelming majority of people in this country were compassionate. You'll always have some people who will oppose progressive change. They opposed it in marriage equality. They opposed it in divorce. But we in a democracy respect the majority, and we get on now in legislation. I think in people's hearts and people's minds, they knew their views on this issue for a long time, but perhaps they didn't know if their neighbour or their friend or their family shared the view. Today, in a very public way, we know that the overwhelming majority of people in Ireland share the view.
Sorry, Minister, you've been speaking there.
Obviously,
how are you?
Hi, how are you? How do you feel today being the Health Minister who actually saw this happen and who made it happen in the government? I mean, it's a momentous day and one that we thought this was such a divisive issue, and now overwhelming support for this.
Yeah, it's a very emotional day in more ways than I ever could have imagined. I remember when I became Health Minister just over 2 years ago, sitting in the rooms with women who had felt the pain of the 8th Amendment. There's a reason I'm wearing this badge today, terminations for medical reasons. They sat there and they told me their stories. They told me how we had let them down and how we had failed them. And I was determined that we were going to do right by them. But there was a situation where we couldn't unless it was a popular vote of the Irish people. Because of an amendment put into our constitution in 1983, we needed constitutional change. And now the Irish people in overwhelming numbers have said they don't want the status quo to continue. And I think that's a very powerful message. I think there's a lot of women in this country today who will breathe a sigh of relief, knowing that if ever they find themselves in a crisis, that we'll help you here in Ireland and not send you abroad. And certainly I voted for the women in my life, thinking if they ever found themselves in a crisis, how I'd like them to be cared for.